So I want to do a video about Greek thought and the beginnings of Greek philosophy, the pre-Socratic philosophers, and the basic ways they came to understand the world. Um, and when I talk about them as philosophers, I don't mean to say that they are somehow separate from what we think of as scientists today. When Greek philosophy first began, they were what were called nature or naturalist philosophers. So they looked at the material world before them that they perceived with their senses, and they tried to make sense of it with the concepts that they had inherited from their language. And the basic way that they understood uh, nature was through the practice of metaphysics, which was basically trying to find more and more general concepts to fit the categories of the world into, and abstracting back and back and back until you arrive at the the final category, the category of everything, which is basically equivalent to the essence of being or existence. And so all these original Greek philosophers, Thales, Anaximander, Anaximenes, Hericlitus, they were looking for the essence of being. And back in that time, the basic folk understanding of the cosmos was that the whole thing was broken down into four basic qualities. There's fire, water, air, and earth, the four elements. And each of these elements are broken up into a characteristic temperature and wetness or dryness. So, for example, water is cold and wet, earth is cold and dry, fire is hot and dry, and what did I leave out? Air is wet and dry. And so Thales began this investigation into being, or at least he's the first written account we have. And he said that, well, everything is water, and that is the category of everything. That is the essence of being, water. And he went into these other elements, fire, air, and earth, and tried to show how they were just derivatives of water, because earth always contains some water in it, air always contains some water in it. But then, see, there was a hole in his logic that Anaximander discovered, which was that you can't have, if everything is water, the essence of everything is water, how does water produce fire? Because based on this understanding that water is a wet, cold substance and fire is a dry, hot substance, how does one category give rise to another category when that other category is its opposite? So Anaximander said, this doesn't work, everything can't be water, everything must be this undecipherable substance, this unintelligible, undeterminable substance that we can never know exactly what it is. It's sort of absent, and it apparently gives rise to all the other elements, the other basic categories, air, fire, water, and earth. And but then Anaximenes came along and said, well, wait a minute, if this essence of being that you say you found, Anaximander, is actually air, and all the other elements are just varieties, or is actually, is actually an undifferentiated substance or matter, then how does something, or undecipherable, undeterminable substance is the basis of the other elements, how does something undeterminable give rise or cause something determinable, such as the four elements? Because obviously fire has an essence in itself which determines its behavior and its action on the world. And for the basis of fire or water or earth or air to be this undecipherable matter, this undeterminable matter, then how can we then make the connection between that undeterminable substance and the stuff that actually exists in the world, that we can see, the elements of the senses? And so Anaximenes said, no, we have to reconceptualize this. Everything is actually air, and fire is just reified air. and water is more dense air, and earth is more dense water, and that everything is this scale of condensation and refraction or reification of the element of air. But then Hericlitus came along and said, well, there's a basic problem in this whole structure of trying to comprehend reality in terms of form and substance from the very beginning. We have to see nature as more of a process. And so Heraclitus pointed out that the essence of being is change, and you cannot step into the same river twice, because you are always changing, the river is always changing. However, we can point out certain processes in nature, like an acorn usually becomes an oak tree if it's nurtured in the correct way. And so there's this hidden systematic unfolding of the processes of nature which we can learn to map and understand. And so, Heraclitus was really the birth of process philosophy. But still, he maintained this idea that there was some hidden essence behind nature that was responsible for its arising. And we see this development now from Thales up to Heraclitus. That's really the stirrings of the human imagination before Plato and Aristotle really systematized it all. Plato took Heraclitus' idea of the naturally existing world of, the physical world itself being this constantly fluctuating, changing arena, whereas the forms behind that natural process were, they were essences. They were static and foundational and stable, and we can have knowledge of them. Plato borrowed also the idea from the Pythagoreans that the essence of being was number, and that we could understand the processes and the forms of nature by representing them in terms of digits and mathematics. And Plato took this idea to form his theory of essences and to divide nature into this realm of pure idea and organic existence. And Aristotle tried to sort of unify Plato's fractured view without actually unifying it totally. He sort of just concealed the dualism by applying the Platonic rationality to the empirical world of the senses. But he primarily left in place Plato's basic ontology of the mind. He just added an ontology of the physical world, of being. And he split being into these two halves, substance and form. And he didn't really gather, Plato didn't gather it much either, the process half of Heraclitus' ideas. That took almost 2,000 years when, Goethe started to re-examine that idea, and then Whitehead and Dewey, and it's really hopefully starting to be gaining more awareness and understanding now. But we see now that this whole development of Greek metaphysics really sets the foundation for the metaphors that we use to understand everything now. And even science still bases its interpretations of its empirical findings on these same metaphors. Basically, we looked for the essence of being, of nature, in the form of either the substances nature is composed of, the forms that those substances take, and the processes that these form-made substances evolve through as they pass through time. And it really, I don't know, it seems useful to have that bedrock to understand the way we think and to understand everything that we do as human beings today. So hopefully that made some sense to everybody out there.